Program is brought to you by Aero Allergen Research. Welcome to the Breathing Easy Show with Dr. Mark Sneller. For the next hour, Dr. Sneller will take your calls and answer your questions on the topics of breathing easy, facts and fallacies about indoor air quality in your home, school, and business. The views, comments, and opinions are those of Dr. Mark Sneller, his guests, and callers. Now, let's begin our program.
Welcome, friends and neighbors. This is Mark Sneller. You're listening to the Breathing Easy radio show, a unique radio program in this country that deals with allergy and asthma, plants and weeds, outdoor pollen and indoor mold, yard work, toxic fragrances, non-toxic cleaning, pets and your allergies, pets and their allergies, and just a whole lot more. In the coming weeks, we're going to be talking about how fragrance products affect asthma, pollen and mold seasons around the country, the truth about ozone machines and air filters, what is chemical sensitivity, is it real, and managed care and HMOs as regards to your respiratory health and how you fit in and what are your rights and maybe what are your wrongs. So we've got a lot coming up over the next several weeks, and certainly we're going to be going on for another 3 months, going to give us a nice round half year, and I'm looking forward to that as I look forward to every program. Now, this program is about education, teaching you to recognize problems in and around your home, your work environment, your school, your business, and it's not just directed toward those people who have allergies and asthma and all those millions who do, certainly, but for the rest of the people who just want to be aware of how we're being poisoned in our environment and various scandals that are going on. By that I mean, let's take for an example the restoration business, and not scandalous in itself, but how they get involved in various scandalous circumstances, such as in schools, where people who don't take care and come in and wholesale rip down false ceilings that have been there for decades and liberate tremendous quantities of allergens, and we can talk about the esoteric, which are gram-negative bacteria and endotoxins and fungal toxins from fungi, as well as their spores. We can talk about insects and insect parts and mite, rat feces and mite feces and dust and plant parts and on and on and on. If they don't take care, then this is going to be liberated into the entire school. We do have national conferences that talk about these things, and it is a national scandal the way we approach the problem. And I'm pleased to bring an award-winning company with you today, Kowalski Construction Incorporated. They're located here in the Phoenix area, and they've been in the remodeling, renovation area for decades. And we've had many pleasant conversations and traded a lot of war stories about indoor air quality and the rights and wrongs of the industry. And they're award-winning. They belong to the Better Business Bureau, Central and Northern Arizona. They belong to the Association of Specialists in Cleaning and Restoration and Arizona Consulting Engineers Association, and on and on. And I'm very pleased to bring two representatives from Kowalski with us today, and we're going to be talking about mold remediation and mold damage in homes and businesses and schools and perhaps hospitals. I've dealt with that as well, and how we can approach the problem logically, where insurance fits into it, what are your rights and wrongs. And if I took a poll and asked how many people out there, how many listeners had serious water damage, I might have a certain amount respond. But if I asked how many people know of someone who has had serious water damage, I'd probably have 10 times the number of people responding, maybe 100 times. We've all heard of somebody or know somebody who've had the problem. So we're going to be talking about that today, and so I'm pleased to introduce Jim Springer and Steve Dorton with us today. Gentlemen, welcome to the Breathing Easy Show. Hello, gentlemen.
Morning, Mark. Morning, Mark.
Morning, gentlemen. Welcome to the Breathing Easy Show. Can you, who's going to be the spokesperson? Who's going to tell us about Kowalski Construction first?
Well, this is Jim. I guess I'll start off. Kowalski Construction was started in 1967 by Adam Kowalski. Him and Adam had such dedication and foresight to see that the insurance dedication and foresight to see that the insurance restoration was an area that was not really tapped into in the Phoenix area. So here we are in 1999. The company's been around 32 years, and Adam has since retired, and the sons, John, Jim, and Steve, now have taken over the company, and we're one of the largest here in the state of Arizona. Are you still there, Mark?
Gentlemen, can you step a little closer to the phone?
Got it as close as we can get it.
Okay, that's a little bit better. As far as mold is concerned and your current projects, are you involved with any of the schools up there at the present time, or any of the school problems? I'm aware of some in the Phoenix area.
No,
Have you been involved with that? What can you tell us about those?
Well, right now we're not actively involved in any of the.
We're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back with you on the Breathing Easy radio program and Kowalski Construction.
The Breathing Easy Show and Dr. Mark Sneller will return after these short messages.
Uncompromising quality, superior technology, and old-fashioned customer service. That's what makes Kowalski Construction unique since 1967. When homes and businesses are damaged by fires, floods, and other disasters, you can trust us to be on the scene quickly to assess the damage and begin putting people's lives back together. Over 97% of our business comes from repeat customers or insurance adjuster recommendations. Give us a call today at 602-944-2645. That's 602-944-2645. Or visit us online at www.kowalski.com. Our services include mold and sewage contamination remediation. And don't forget to ask about our statewide service and fast-track project scheduling. We do the work right the first time. We get it done on time. Simply, we put your mind at ease. We're Kowalski Construction. Call now, 602-944-2645. Our reputation guarantees that we will stand behind our work long after the job is done. Call now.
Talk to our expert host. In the Phoenix area, call 247-KFNX. Outside the Phoenix area, call toll-free 877-433-KFNX.
It's time for more of the Breathing Easy Show with Dr. Sneller and his guests.
Hi, welcome back to the Breathing Easy Show. This is Dr. Mark Sneller, and we're visiting with Jim Springer and Steve Dorton with Kowalski Construction right here in the Phoenix area. It's an award-winning construction company, and in many areas they belong to the Central and Northern Arizona Better Business Bureau, the Association of Specialists in Cleaning and Restoration, the Arizona Consulting Engineers Association, and a number of others. They've won awards, and they've been around for decades, and they're very experienced in the restoration and renovation area as far as homes, schools, businesses, hospitals, whatever building there is. And the topic today is mold and how that affects the building structure, and I'll be covering the part about how it affects our health. Jim and Steve, welcome to the Breathing Easy Show.
Thank you, Mark.
Good.
Mark.
There are a lot of questions that I have for you, and one of them has to do with the fact that people take it for granted that they're not going to have a particular problem, although everybody knows of somebody who's had a problem. It always seems like there's a water pipe break when they're on vacation, and they need to get in touch with a company. How do they get in touch with you?
Well, they can give us a call. We have a 24-hour emergency service line. They can give us a call at 944-2645. And again, we're on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Now, typically, when you do get called and you go in, whether it's and usually is it from an insurance company?
Well,
that calls you first.
Generally, we're recommended by the insurance company. I would say 80% of the time, the call comes directly from the homeowner.
Okay. Now, what's the typical kind of scene that you walk into when you're called?
Well, when we're dealing with a water loss, for example, a plumbing pipe break, we dispatch the crew out, and there could be standing water throughout the house, could be standing water in just the bathroom area or the kitchen. we try to determine what the cause of the leak is. If it is a plumbing leak, obviously we want to have the water shut off. Then we want to mitigate any further damage or prevent any further damage. So we would start water extraction, start the drying process, trying to lower the relative humidity in the building.
So obviously that, because when I come in, it's usually, if not always, after the fact that there's already mold growing from the walls and it's penetrated the drywall or the baseboards or the inner structure of the home. But you get there before, so obviously, and to our listener, it's critical that they call immediately in order to dry out the home.
That's right. With their homeowner's insurance, they have an obligation to prevent further damage. And obviously, again, they need to start the drying process as soon as possible. Again, lowering the relative humidity below 70%. And a lot of people think that by turning the heater on will help dry things out. But we know that cool air will carry more moisture than warm air. So by turning the air conditioning on and transferring the cool air to the outside, and that will start the drying process a lot quicker.
Well, couldn't you turn on the heater and open the windows to some extent to allow the water vapor to escape but still raise the temperature in the home?
Well, you can, but again, you want to lower. Right now, we're in the monsoon season where it's very humid. We know that the air conditioning system does transfer some of the humidity into the house out. We know that the cause of mold is related to temperature and humidity. So we want to get the humidity down as quick as possible.
Okay. Now, how do you interact with the client? Suppose, okay, well and good that you're drying out the home and making plans to restore the damaged property. What is the situation when you walk into a mold-damaged residence or business?
Well, our field crew have all been trained on recognizing mold contamination. They've all been told that, for example, if we open up a wall where we have some moisture damage and they visually see what they believe is mold contamination, we instructed them to seal up that area with 6 mil plastic to prevent the mold spores from contaminating the rest of the dwelling. And then we try not to alarm the residents, but we explain to them that we believe we have a mold problem. And we always get in contact with an environmental company, whether it be a microbiologist, industrial hygienist, or certified industrial hygienist. We ask them to come out and do some testing so we know exactly what we're dealing with.
Right.
And then they in turn put together what they refer to as a protocol or guidelines on the mold remediation.
Gotcha. From my standpoint, as a microbiologist and in the indoor air quality field, I'm kind of your counterpart. And while I've never worked with you particularly, I've worked with numerous other agencies. And one of the things that I see as a common contaminant is the real small spored Aspergillus group. And these, and also Stachybotrys is showing up, and that latter one is associated with sudden infant death syndrome back east and a number of other areas of the country. And it's not so much the spores which can be damaging, which they are, but there are other components of a mold that are hazardous too, such as fungal toxins that are associated with the spores, and mycotoxins, as they're technically called, as well as the smell of mold. And a lot of people, at least I find, I don't know if that's your experience, but they're concerned about the smell as much as they are the appearance.
Oh, yes. And people are becoming more and more aware of the health concerns with mold. It wasn't that long ago that if you saw mold from a water damage, you might treat it with a little bleach, seal it, and then paint over it. But we know now, obviously, a lot more than we did 5 years ago.
That's interesting. We have a caller. Welcome to the Breathing Easy Show.
Yes, hello.
Hello.
Yes,
do you have a question?
Pardon me?
Do you have a question?
Yes, I do. I had a leak from the apartment above me, and water ran down the wall in my bathroom, and I don't see any mold, but I smell a very moldy, musty odor, and I don't understand how this can be.
Okay. All right, thank you. I've got a response to that. Do one of you gentlemen want to try that one?
Why don't you go ahead first?
Okay. Do you have, did you say you had wallpaper there?
Yes, I do have wallpaper.
And on the side where the water ran?
Yes, I do.
Okay. What typically happens there is that the water will run down. It'll find a way to get behind that wallpaper. And then it'll grow down behind there against the drywall or on the paint and begin its growth. And so it won't liberate, it'll liberate spores, but only in that space behind the wallpaper, and there won't be any in the airspace. So we can monitor the room and do the microscopic work on what we collect from the air, but we probably won't see any spores. But it's there behind the wallpaper. Now, how do you check for that? The first thing to do is, well, there are a lot of things that you can do. It depends on your state of respiratory health. Do you have asthma
Yes,
or
I
allergies?
do. Yes, I have, and it's hard to breathe. I've noticed that the problem is increased.
Okay, well, I was going to recommend the sniff test where you just smell the wallpaper, and you can tell then if the musty smell is coming from behind there. If you have asthma, I wouldn't recommend that. But I would suggest that you feel that wallpaper and look for any bubbling in the wallpaper. If there is bubbling, you take a sharp little knife and you cut 3 sides to a square, maybe a ½ an inch on a side, and you peel back the wallpaper and carefully look behind that bubble, and you should be able to see the mold growth. Then you can just kind of close that up again because you haven't cut out the whole square. And that will tell you that you need to get that wallpaper carefully removed and replaced. And that's the guideline for what you're talking about, and that's what I would suggest.
Now, after I replace the wallpaper, will there be any further problem then?
Well, a lot depends on how they remove the wallpaper, too. You can't just go ripping off that wallpaper. It has to be wet and taken off piece by piece and maintained in a wet condition. And while that's going on, and then also the workers should wear a mask, and the bathroom should be should have at least a plastic sheet covering the door so you don't liberate spores into the home. But that would be the methodology that I would suggest. There may be others, but that's one that's worked for me.
Now, would you suggest that I would leave for that day, leave the apartment?
Yes, I would think that would be practical, and if it's covered by insurance, you should be able to be housed in another facility for at least a day or two while that's being repaired.
Well, thank you so much. It's been very helpful.
Very good.
Thank you.
Gentlemen, we'll be back with you. We're going to take a short break. And, folks, you're listening to the Breathing Easy Show. This is Dr. Mark Sneller. We're visiting with Kowalski Construction. And we're going to be hearing from them regarding some of their adventures in the restoration business, and especially in the area of mold remediation. And that's our topic for today. And we'll be right back.
Uncompromising quality, superior technology, and old-fashioned customer service. That's what makes Kowalski Construction unique since 1967. When homes and businesses are damaged by fires, floods, and other disasters, you can trust us to be on the scene quickly to assess the damage and begin putting people's lives back together. Over 97% of our business comes from repeat customers or insurance adjuster recommendations. Give us a call today at 602-944-2645. That's 602-944-2645. Or visit us online at www.kowalski.com. Our services include mold and sewage contamination remediation. And don't forget to ask about our statewide service and fast-track project scheduling. We do the work right the first time. We get it done on time. Simply, we put your mind at ease. We're Kowalski Construction. Call now, 602-944-2645. Our reputation guarantees that we will stand behind our work long after the job is done. Call now.
It's time for more of the Breathing Easy Show with Dr. Sneller and his guests.
Welcome back to the Breathing Easy Show. I'm Dr. Mark Sneller, and this program deals with allergy and asthma, plants and weeds, outdoor pollen and indoor mold, yard work, toxic fragrances, non-toxic cleaning, your pet's allergies and how the pets affect your allergies, and just a whole lot more. It's a unique radio program that deals with respiratory health, not just for people with asthma and allergies, but for those folks who just want to breathe clean air and not get tricked into buying commercial products because they say they have a country fresh scent on them. Today we're visiting with award-winning Kowalski Construction Company. We're talking about mold damage and mold remediation in homes, schools, businesses, offices, whatever. And it's an important issue because we've just had, well, it's always an important issue, but right now it particularly pertains to us because of the storm systems that have passed through. Many people have lost roofs. Many people have water damage to the structure, to the building. Water has come in from a number of avenues. And there's just a lot to talk about with these folks. We're visiting with Jim Springer and Steve Dorton with Kowalski Construction. And I want to ask them something that we were talking about during the break. And one of the things is the polybutylene plumbing problem. That's a nationwide problem. Tell us a little bit about that and how that affects water and mold.
Well, Mark, the polybutylene plumbing system, your listeners might recognize it as the gray plastic supply lines that usually run in the attic area to feed the bathrooms and the kitchen. And there was a class action lawsuit settled against the manufacturers on this product because they have a failure at the fittings. And part of the failure is that the fittings can leak either suddenly, creating a large amount of water damage, or they can leak slowly over a period of time into the wall cavities or in the attic space and not be noticed by the occupants until possibly they start seeing mold contamination. We're currently working with a number of large multi-housing projects in the valley that have these problems. One of the projects, we have a remediation crew on call 24 hours a day. When we get the call, we take the plumber out. The water supply is turned off at the building, and our technician sets up a critical barrier at the area where we believe the leak is occurring. And what I mean by critical barrier, we use what's called a glove bag, which is a plastic sheet with built-in gloves, so we can tape this sheet to the drywall to create a critical barrier. The wall is opened up, and the reason we have this is because if there is contamination within the wall cavity, it will not contaminate the rest of the dwelling.
Gotcha. We've got a caller. Welcome to the Breathing Easy Show. You're on the air.
Yes, good morning, Dr. Sneller.
Good morning.
I'm an elementary school principal, and we have a lot of children and as well as staff members with asthma and a variety of allergies, usually mold and pollen. And I have two questions for you. Do swamp coolers cause an increase in allergies and asthma in schools? And would AC be better in this situation? And then my second question is, what are some preventive measures to take to lower the incidence of asthma and allergy in schools?
Wow. There's a lot there. Either you gentlemen want to take that? Thank you very much for your call. That's going to keep us going here for a few minutes. Not that we need any more incentive. Gentlemen, what do you think?
Well, that sounds like one, Mark, that maybe you ought to run with.
Well, as far as... let's take the second one first, preventive measures. And we're talking about schools. We're talking about a lot of people. We're talking about children, staff, teachers, administrators, everybody that's at that school. And now we're talking about hundreds and hundreds of people. You know, when I think about preventive measures in a situation like that, it's not just mold that I think about. It's the entire environment. It's volatile organic compounds, VOCs. It's as an elementary school principal, you don't see automotive shops and you don't see photography shops where there's a lot of VOC emissions. Automotive being the most nefarious of that group. So you don't see a lot of the shop activities, but there's still a lot of VOCs that are going on in a school. And they can build up in a classroom, and those VOCs can come from a variety of sources. Marker pens that have xylene or acetone, and they do make markers now that are water-based. various glues that are approved versus those that are not approved, and cleaning supplies on the part of the cleaning staff and what they use to wash down the walls and the drinking fountains and such. And a lot of these are EPA approved. Which doesn't necessarily mean that they're totally safe. They're just better than most of the products that are out there on the market. So what I would do as far as preventive measures is take a slow walk through the school and just look at the classrooms, look at the way they're using the materials, whether they're emitting VOCs into the air. I mean, personal care products are notorious, too, as far as the teachers are concerned, and they need to reduce the level of hairsprays, aftershaves, all of these kinds of things that give off emissions. And if it's evaporative cooled, that's a little bit better because a lot of that's blown out. If it's air conditioned, then it's just recirculated and it builds up in the classroom. And I would look at the way the cleaning staff cleans and dusts and they should use damp dusting above eye level and the kinds of vacuuming that they do in the room, and the kind of vacuum cleaner should be upgraded there, and a lot of things in terms of preventive. As far as the swamp coolers versus the air conditioner, the jury is still out on that one. I don't have any problem with swamp coolers as long as they are maintained and kept free from lime and kept just clean and fresh, and the water sump is clean. Then you're not going to be transmitting excess moisture into the rooms, and you're going to blow out any excessive materials and not build up a lot of mold. Air conditioning, as I say, normally there's like a 20% fresh air makeup, and you could be okay there too. But the school needs to breathe just like people do. As far as mold and these different air handling systems, that's something that is humidity based for the most time. So if you can keep that humidity down between below 50% in the 40 to 50 range, and maybe a little bit below that, you should be fine. Unless there's a major problem with your air handling system. So I would recommend a periodic walkthrough of the school and just kind of inspect the classrooms and just look around and look at what kind of contributions you're getting from the standpoint of volatile organic compounds, VOCs, or from particles and dust. And that's kind of a real general answer for you, but I hope that helps.
It has helped quite a bit. You've given me a lot of information. I really thank you, and I enjoy your show.
Well, thank you very much. Thanks for your call.
Bye-bye.
All right, bye. All right, gentlemen, any additions to that? We were talking about polybutylene, and you're talking about your remediation situation. So that really calls for training of personnel. They have to know exactly what to do then, and I'm sure they're getting on-the-job training, but you need more than that, too, before they even get into the job.
Yeah, that's correct, Mark. I'd like Steve to talk about the training of our field staff.
Okay.
Yeah, Mark. The training for mold remediation is a little bit different than the normal training for safety issues. Everybody has to have respiratory protection, and what we use is a full-face negative pressure air purifying respirator, and we use a combination cartridge that has a HEPA filtration on it, which is a high-efficiency particulate air filtration system, and an organic vapor filter that also goes along that filters out chlorine and stuff like that. They have to be fit tested, and they also have to have a physical that's sent off to a medical technician that's reviewed to make sure that they're fit to use this equipment. We also use full Tyvek suits, gloves, and bags because we want to protect our people just as much as we want to protect the people that we're working for. And then they have to be trained on how to set up the containment areas. You have many containment areas for small areas of mold, and then you have large containment areas when you have a house that's been left, say, for a month where the water's been running and the mold's climbing up the walls in every room.
Right.
And they also have to know how to dispose of it properly. Like you said, keep it wet down and then dispose of the drywall. They have to be able to know how to treat the lumber and how to seal everything. We also use microbial agents that we have to protect ourselves from. So the training is very important, and it can't just be on-the-job training. They have to be trained before they go in to do the work.
Fascinating, and I'm learning a lot, and I'm sure our listeners are too. We're going to continue with Kowalski Construction and mold remediation, how they train their people, the polybutylene scandal that's around the nation and in the Phoenix area, and more. And we'll be back after this.
The Breathing Easy Show and Dr. Mark Sneller will return after these short messages.
Uncompromising quality, superior technology, and old-fashioned customer service. That's what makes Kowalski Construction unique since 1967. When homes and businesses are damaged by fires, floods, and other disasters, you can trust us to be on the scene quickly to assess the damage and begin putting people's lives back together. Over 97% of our business comes from repeat customers or insurance adjuster recommendations. Give us a call today at 602-944-2645. That's 602-944-2645. Or visit us online at www.kowalski.com. Our services include mold and sewage contamination remediation. And don't forget to ask about our statewide service and fast-track project scheduling. We do the work right the first time. We get it done on time. Simply, we put your mind at ease. We're Kowalski Construction. Call now, 602-944-2645. Our reputation guarantees that we will stand behind our work long after the job is done. Call now.
It's time for more of the Breathing Easy Show with Dr. Sneller and his guests.
Welcome back to the Breathing Easy Show. I'm Mark Sneller. We're visiting with Kowalski Construction, and we're talking about mold remediation and how you interact with your insurance company. That's going to be the next topic that we're going to get into here in just a minute. And I want to, during a break, I was talking with... Oh, we have a caller already. All right, very good. You're on the Breathing Easy Show. This is Mark Sneller. Welcome to the radio program.
Thank you. I'd like to ask your guests if they have any experience in using less toxic products for chemically sensitive people.
That's a very good question. That was one of the items we were going to discuss, that when we go into a home to treat mold or mildew, we always sit down with the homeowner or the residents and ask if there is any chemical sensitivities, what they are. If we don't know the answer to what chemicals we need to use because of their sensitivity, then we do get with the microbiologists or the hygienists to get their recommendation.
So it is an issue with you then. And that, I mean, as far as you gentlemen are concerned in your company.
Oh yes, we're very concerned about again the safety with the residents and again our employees.
That would probably also pertain to putting the house back together again and the kinds of paints and solvents and materials that you use when you treat the home to get it back into shape.
Absolutely.
Great. Okay, well, I hope that helps a little bit. It's a general answer, but there are companies out there addressed to the caller that are concerned with that. And so you need to ask that. I want to get into a couple little stories that I have and kind of change the pace a little bit. And one of the stories that I have, and this is real typical, usually a pipe's going to break according to Murphy's Law. When you're on vacation, something's going to happen. Somebody's going to run some pressure checks or whatever, but the water supply line to the toilet's going to break, or the water heater line or something along those lines, or a polybutylene problem is going to occur. We'll talk more about that at another time. And so you come back into a foot of standing water in the home, and there's mold growing from the chandeliers and from the walls and from the baseboards, and it's soaked into the drywall, and the home is grossly contaminated, and it is extremely unsafe for anybody to be in a home when it's in that condition, regardless of what your respiratory condition is, whether you consider yourself normal or you have allergies or whether you have asthma, and 85% of asthmatics have an allergic asthma anyway. So that pretty much includes all of them. So in one particular case that I have in mind, that scenario took place, and the end of the story was that the insurance company dragged their feet to such an extent, and of course they had to pack out the home, which means take out every bit of material that was in that home, every stick of furniture, and the homeowner had to itemize everything. And I would recommend that to the listener. You make sure you start a file. And who said what, when, and just it's going to be a project when your home is in that condition. So make it a project and get your home back in shape. And so they packed it out. The insurance company hired people that were not reputable but cheap, and they put together the home and still left it contaminated. And the end of the story was that the woman was put up in a hotel for so long and had such illness that the insurance company wound up having to pay $2 million for this home that originally cost the woman perhaps $5,000 a number of years ago. She lived there all her life, but they wound up paying millions, They had to buy the home and the lot that it was on, and that was it. And so that brings us into insurance kind of issues. And so I'm going to ask the gentleman with us from Kowalski, Jim or Steve, if they have any other stories that parallel mine and what contributions they can make.
Well, Mark, this is Jim. I do have a couple. There's, I don't have firsthand knowledge of this particular case, but in Texas, one of the major insurance companies that I know all of your listeners would recognize, a couple of their adjusters apparently mishandled a claim, a water loss, and the homeowner or insured has filed a criminal complaint against the two adjusters because of stachybotrys apparently had formed underneath some hardwood flooring that the moisture was trapped under there. But that's pretty frightening when criminal complaints are being charged against the adjusters. To carry a little further, insurance carriers are becoming increasingly reluctant to deal with mold, and a lot of companies are excluding it. Here in Arizona, where we have so many part-time residents, mold is a big problem because they could have a leak while they're not here in their local home. They come in for the winter, surprise, there's mold 3 feet high throughout the whole house. Because it was discovered after the fact, a lot of times there is coverage for that because obviously they weren't here to react to the leak. But the resulting damages, both directly from the water leak and the mold remediation, generally are covered. But again, that varies from insurance carrier to insurance carrier.
Yeah. So you're saying that, let me understand this, so you're saying that if you, say, are on vacation and you come back and there was damage, now there's mold in there, that you have a more likely chance of having it covered?
Correct, because you weren't home at the time to mitigate the damages or prevent further damage. Now, say if you were home, you knew you had a leak, mold grew, your chances of having that covered under your insurance are probably slim and none. But most policies read that coverage has to be a sudden occurrence. Well, sudden occurrence can be when you suddenly notice the problem, or when suddenly when the water appeared. So that's a real fine line that we deal with day in and day out, and it makes our job difficult on trying to determine the repair method and helping.
I don't think people really understand the true cost of something like this. I mean, even if it's insured, and hopefully it is, we're talking some big dollars in terms of major mold contamination, maybe $50,000 on up.
Oh, sure.
You've got to pack out. Everything has to get out of that house. Every single stick and item. It has to be treated individually. Of course, the home has to be reconstructed, and a lot of times brought down to the 2x4s and put back together again. And then the insurance company has to pay for your upkeep and wherever you're staying, and on and on. And or replacement of items that are total. And so people need to itemize every single item that has contamination on it, and like I say, start a file.
Yeah, Mark, one of the things that people need to realize is due to the toxic effects and stuff of mold and the way we have to treat it, it's 2 to 3 times more expensive than just going in there and taking out wet drywall the day it happened. By the time you have the mold and we have to put our suits on and negative air machines or HEPA-vacs, the cost is, like I said, 2 to 3 times higher than just a normal remediation would have been if you done it right away.
You have to protect your workers.
Yeah, they have to be protected. It's a slower work because of the fact they are wearing suits, they are wearing respirators. They can't. Your productivity goes down when you're in a situation like that because you just can't do as much work, and especially in Arizona where the heat's so high.
Yes.
Because most of the time we have to turn off the AC and close up all the vents anyway.
Well, from the insurance company's point of view, though, what would you state to that? I mean, how do they look at these problems? I know you touched on it, but do they try to get away with as little as possible, or are they there to see you through to the end?
Well, again, it varies from company to company and from adjuster to adjuster. Some companies are informing their adjusters, getting the knowledge they need. Other companies just react at the moment, and some of the files are being mishandled.
Okay. Let me go back to something very quickly. We were talking about the polybutylene situation. So there is no way that a person can know if he has a leak there before he sees it, he or she sees it?
Well, you can hire a plumber who's familiar with the polybutylene. They can inspect the fittings. Generally at the fittings you'll see some signs of a leak. You know how copper can turn green. That'll be a sign that there's been some moisture. They can inspect the plastic pipe itself. But it is a good idea to have it inspected periodically.
Okay, if he has access to it.
Correct.
Before we wrap it up there, we've got a few minutes left. What is it you'd like to tell us about Kowalski? And by the way, I've enjoyed having you, as I'm sure your listeners have. We've had a number of calls today. I'd like to ask you to come on next week if you'd be so willing, and let's do this again, and we'll kind of review what we talked about today and get into some new areas of restoration. And this pertains to everyone because either our own environment is restored or we're walking into one that's being restored. The most obvious example is new carpeting in an office building, and that's where carpeting has gotten its bad name. So we've got a lot to talk about in terms of your respiratory health. So would you be willing to come back again next week, gentlemen?
I believe we would.
Well, that's good.
Yes.
Good. Thank you very much, and we'll look forward to having you. Tell us about Kowalski Construction once again. How can people get in touch with you?
Well, our phone number here in the Phoenix area is 944-2645. Again, we're on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And just something that separates Kowalski Construction from some of the other restoration companies in the state. Kowalski's are firm believers in education. We train all of our personnel. For example, I'm a certified restorer. We have another estimator who is a certified restorer. And what that means that the National Institute of Disaster Restoration started this program in 1976 to give a little more credibility to our industry. And they do an extensive background check, business and personal. We have to attend a school in Washington and take a written exam. We have to do a written report on a restoration project, and there's ongoing recertification. So it gives some credibility to our business.
Yes, well, I'm impressed. And I thank you, gentlemen. Your knowledge is extensive, and so is your experience. And this is Dr. Mark Sneller. This is the Breathing Easy radio show, a unique program in this country that deals with respiratory health. And we'll be back next week, once again with Kowalski, and we're going to be talking about all aspects of restoration and maybe a few national scandals as well. Thank you for listening to the Breathing Easy radio show, and have a good breathing week.